Welcome to The Big Break Show, a podcast where we discuss short-term rentals, entrepreneurship, life, mindset, and everything in between. Here are your hosts, Rafa Loza and Jesse Vasquez.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of our beloved show, The Big Break Show. And today, on this beautiful Wednesday, I believe it is, I'm here with Mr. Jesse Dory the Fish Vasquez. How are you?
What's up, buddy? Yeah, you know what? He's calling me Dory because I forget stuff, like literally after he mentioned something. So, but you know what? I'm not going to forget, Rafa, this episode with Mr. Josh Goldstein because, man, this guy is beat odds like crazy. He had cancer diagnosed a while back in, I think, 2019, kind of revamped and changed his life. He works in Hollywood. He's a producer and now a real estate investor. And dude, Rafa, this guy has grown so freaking fast in the last 2 years. Like in 2 years from now, this guy's going to have like hotels and like, dude, I mean, I don't even have any words right now.
Crushing it is the right word, man. It's funny because I made a joke on it, right? I've been in short-term rentals for a little bit over 5 years now. And this dude's knocked out 20 something doors in the last year and a half. Unreal, like crushing it. Dude is badass and his story is inspiring. So, take some notes, guys. Pay attention. And like, I know a lot of people here are going to resonate because he goes from no doors to 20 doors in such a short amount of time. And he talks about how simple the process is and about moving money around. And just, he has a great story all around and such a great guy all around too, right? Met him at a meetup and immediately I was like, we got to have him on the podcast. So
yeah, totally a good dude.
Mm-hmm.
He's got a good story, guys. Just hang in. And most importantly, please like and share this with people that you like and resonate and care about because this is a good episode, Rafa.
Yeah, it is, for sure. Without further ado. Josh, what's up, man? So yeah, I'm happy that you're on the show today so we can talk about your story. I know we met briefly at the meetup event that we had here in SoCal, and I thought you had a really fascinating story about how you got into short-term rentals and everything that you've been through. So before we get started, can you tell the audience who you are, give them a little bit of your background, where you came from, how you got into investing, and what you're actually doing in the investing world as well?
Sure. First of all, glad to be here. Super excited. Love talking to you guys at the meetup. My name is Josh Goldstein. I am from Southern California, grew up here, and now I live in Southern California still, work here. I'm a producer in the entertainment industry. I do commercials mainly, but I've done a bit of everything, music videos, some movies, some TV, you name it, I've kind of done it. But about early 2015, something happened in my life where unexpectedly I was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And I was doing well at my job, making lots of money. At the time, we had just purchased a house that we were dumping all of our money into to renovate and make it exactly what we want. As we were, 3/4 of the way through, I got the diagnosis and it was a little shock to the system, and they were saying you can't work because you have treatments and this and that and whatever. And so, I never really expected that before. And something that you should think about is if you can't work and when money stops coming in. And until it happens to you, you don't really expect it. So anyways, that's what kind of led me down the road of real estate. During that time, I started reading, the first book was Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And, I kind of just was like, I'm an idiot. How did I not think about this before? And basically, I did dedicate that year just to recovery and going through the treatments. Unfortunately, I couldn't focus on too much else because, with chemotherapy and whatnot, it really drains you and you can't do much else. But I did fully recover. And when I did, I dedicated just getting out of debt from building this house, getting all my financials back in order, and I just worked as hard as I possibly could while I started to learn more and more and more about real estate. And a couple of years later, I started making offers, started with a bunch of different markets, didn't know what I wanted to do still. And then finally, beginning of 2020, I landed my first deal. And from there, I just saw how it worked and exploded from there.
I love it, man. So first, I want to say, I don't know, is the right word congratulations on getting over the whole cancer thing? Is that the right word you would say?
Sure, thank you.
Yeah, man, I'm happy that you fully recovered. So, something I wanted to touch on too. It's funny. I think we all kind of like when we first read Rich Dad Poor Dad, we were like, how can we've never thought about this, right? Because the concept behind it is so simple. That's why that book's so popular. It's such a simple concept, but such a really strong book, because anybody that reads it, it's literally like it clicks in your head and you go, I can't believe I never even considered this or thought about this or like even knew about this.
I mean, to the point where I'm frustrated with myself because I'd always loved real estate, looking at houses and design and this, that, the other. And it just didn't occur to me to, be able to make money from it. And I knew there's real estate investors, but it just seemed like such a different, non-tangible thing that I don't know. That's not what I did. So I just,
For sure.
Yeah.
but the book's so inspiring, and that's what kind of led me down this road.
Yeah. It's such simple terms too, where you're just like, holy crap, I didn't realize this. Josh, real quick, like, how did you? I know getting into the cancer diagnosis. I lost my dad a couple years ago from cancer, and it is
Sorry.
a pain in the ass to deal with, not only for you but the family. How did that diagnosis happen? Like, what was going on at that time?
So I was actually scouting a job in South America, and so literally on the plane ride back, I had eaten the local service company took me out to this really nice lunch before I left, and it was like kind of heavy. It was like steak and whatever, but it was delicious. I'm on the plane, and I just remember feeling like, oh man, I'm feeling really nauseous. I do not feel well. Maybe I just overdid it with lunch, whatever. Get home that week, it just continued, and I just couldn't get past the nausea and just feeling off. And I was going to a meeting, a director's meeting, and my wife, and I was getting ready, and I started throwing up, and my wife said, I've never asked you to do this, but I need you to back out of these jobs that you're on, and we need to figure out what's going on. And, just something in her knew that this wasn't like I wasn't the flu or whatever. So I was like, okay. Had some conversations, had to back out. Then went into doctor's offices. They did an endoscopy, which is the tube down your throat, and they did see a mass in the pancreas, which doesn't necessarily mean cancer, but they took samples, and then several days later, I got the diagnosis. So, and the reason why I was feeling sick is because it was blocking my bile duct. So I was jaundice. I was like kind of yellow, and that was what was making me sick.
Got it. So it was kind of like I'm assuming you caught it early, so it wasn't like a Mets it didn't spread anywhere. It was just kind of in that one specific area.
It didn't spread. They didn't really give it a stage. What they called it was borderline resectable. And what that means is the tumor was kind of tangled up with my portal vein. And until they opened me up, they wouldn't know exactly how much. And, the surgeon I had, I believe is the best. We actually went to Johns Hopkins for a month for the surgery. And he was a surgeon there. He learned under the surgeon who basically invented what's called the Whipple surgery, which is the main surgery for pancreatic cancer. And my surgeon, he's like, this is the only surgery I do. Like, I do this day in, day out. And so I felt in good hands. He had the foresight, and I'm sure this will come up later, like in order to like work with teams, he brought in like a portal vein specialist just in case, because again, he didn't know how intertwined it was going to be. And it turned out that it was intertwined. They had to cut part of the portal vein, and this vein specialist was able to like patch it back together. So, if he didn't have that foresight and like wasn't a team player, he, it would have maybe gone a different way.
Wow. Yeah. And I'm always curious to ask people, like, there's certain I actually used to work in a hospice. So like these questions, like I always ask like what happened or what was different, and you never know, things come out of nowhere. Like, and this happens to people every single day. And I know you're probably a healthy guy. I mean, you look pretty healthy. You probably had a pretty good diet, all that stuff for quite some time. So things happen, and you just mentioned it earlier. Like, you don't think about that kind of stuff until it's like here in front of you and present. But it's really a good idea for everybody listening out to put your affairs in order. and start thinking about cash flow. I mean, you're probably listening to this for a reason. People are probably listening to this for a reason. We have you on here for a reason, to share your story and to let other people and inspire them, to let them know like things happen and you have this beautiful life. I mean, producer doing all these awesome things, and all of a sudden, boom, out of nowhere, your life flipped upside down. So that kind of leads me into the conversation that I want to go into now is, how did your life change with that? Like, obviously there's probably a new perspective that you woke up with that day. So if you want to kind of dive us into that, and we'll dive into the whole real estate stuff and how maybe even that changed your mind. I mean, you kind of talked about it a second ago.
The good news is my wife is extremely positive and a team player, and she supports me in everything. And when this happened and when we were going through it, I mean, it's like my respect for her and love for her just grew infinite, because like everyone always says like, oh my gosh, you went through so much, whatever. And to me, it's like, I feel like she went through so much because she was dealing with, the kids were young. She was dealing with so much stuff. So that mindset of just being strong, being positive, making sure that like I never got down on myself. I mean, it was a lot to bear. So when I recovered, that's when my mindset was like, okay, I need to be as healthy as I possibly can. And it's not like I was super unhealthy before, but like I'm definitely way more healthy now than I was before cancer. It really kicked my butt into gear in terms of exercise, food. I mean, supplements I did start taking during the cancer year, and it's very excessive, I would say. But I still take it to this day. And, those supplements, they ward off sickness, colds, and, the kids coming home from school, they bring everything home with them. And my wife would get everything. And I usually would avoid like, I don't know, 90% of it, just because I was taking all these supplements and keeping my immune system strong and whatnot. But what all this did is it really focused me, and it made me realize like my very good, successful job could stop like that, because I'm freelance. I'm not at a company. The company can't give me leave and still pay me. It literally is all up to me. So it's like once I stop working, and this was a problem even before I got sick, it's like going on vacation was tough, because it's like if a job pops up, it really is hard for me to turn it down and lose that money, but then also spend money on vacation. And just mentally, it was really tough. So, part of it is a security net for, sickness or things that could happen. But part of it is just being able to enjoy my life and going on vacation with the family and not stressing about turning down jobs. And so, I wanted to create a life where we would have adventures, be less stressed, and the money portion of it was not as big of a deal.
So I have a quick question around like you recovering and getting healthy. Like just out of curiosity, right? We don't have to spend too much time on it, but what kind of dietary changes did you make, like in terms of food and stuff like that? Because I talk about this a lot on the episodes with Jesse, and he's always making fun of me because I'm plant based now, right? And so I don't eat any meat. Well, I eat meat from time to time when I'm traveling and stuff like that, but what kind of changes did you make to your diet that you noticed were significantly like this now? Like because of this, I feel a little bit better.
Well, I've tried a lot of different things. When I was like going in for surgery or right after surgery, the lowest weight I was, which is extremely, extremely low, I think I was at 118 or something, which I was literally
Wow.
skin and bones, like
Yeah.
no muscle, like nothing. I just was like super gaunt, super, super skinny, which is, I was before cancer, I was pushing, close to 200 or whatever. Now I'm stabilized around 160. But when I was recovering, first, I think like my wife and all the doctors like just eat everything. Eat what you can. Just you got to put the weight back on. And so like I didn't go too crazy, but I did. I was just trying to get as many calories as I could. But while I was doing it, I was trying to exercise, burn off fat, whatever I needed. Since then, I mean, I did try a vegan diet. I did try gluten-free diets, all that sort of stuff. It was really hard for me to maintain a good weight with that stuff. So at this point, I just try my best, because I do still like to go out to eat and enjoy certain things, but I just try to eat like, grilled chicken, rice, Just don't overdo it on the bad stuff. And, like I personally have a sugar addiction. I love sweets.
Oh
And
yeah,
I
me
just,
too.
as much as I can, I just try to like curb it where I can. And I think the biggest change is like my exercise regimen. I try to exercise, I don't know, 5 to almost every day, a week, 5 days to 7 days. So I'm pretty diligent about that. I mean, if I have an off week or if I'm traveling, I'm not really going to beat myself up about it, but I just try to be as active and um, get as much cardio as I can in.
Yeah, I love that. So let me ask you about the transition phase of when you were doing your recovery, realizing that you can't really depend on the income of your job, being a freelancer and stuff like that. So it was kind of like these things where it was putting stress on your life, right? Where even like you said, the vacation thing. What made you want to really focus on the investing side of things for real estate? I know you said rich dad, poor dad, but was it the whole going through this phase of, man, there's no income coming in? Did you read the book at the same time, or was it in the back burner? Like, can you talk about that for a second?
It was definitely the no income coming in, and unfortunately cancer is expensive too, so it's like tons of hospital bills. Even insurance is what it is. It's like I think I spent out of pocket 80 to 100 grand of like
Wow.
just out of pocket. And I mean, luckily I did have help, because again, we were spending everything on this house, and I had a good support system. Like my sister raised money for me, my parents helped out. It was just something I needed help. But then also during that year, what I did was, so when in my producing job, there's two ways I make money. One way is like other companies call me up and say, hey, we have this job, it's awarded, here's the budget, here you go, will you do it? And I say yes or no, and I go and make money for that company. But I also have my own production company, so sometimes clients come direct to me and say, hey, how do we do this job, can you put everything together with me? And I'll make more money doing that. Even if I'm not producing it, I could hire another producer and kind of let them run and I oversee it. But while I had cancer, I basically contacted all the production companies I could that I had relationships with and just said, hey, I'm going through this. If you guys have any straggling jobs that doesn't fit into your criteria, please give them to me. I need help. And luckily, a bunch of them did. And that helped me out tremendously. But even with other people producing and me overseeing it during that time, it was very difficult. It was hard to focus. It was hard to, I'm used to juggling so many things at once, but during that time, it was extremely difficult because everything was focused on just the recovery portion of it. But when I did recover, I kept up producing jobs through my own production company. And on top of it, I was producing for other companies as well. So I was just grinding as hard as I could. And I realized I couldn't keep up that pace. And even if I did, again, like something else could happen and then all that money would stop again. So that's when I really, after I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, I recovered, started working on my financials. That's when I started digging into like bigger pockets. And like Rich Dad Poor Dad is great for the mindset, but again, it doesn't really teach you how to invest. So that's when I was like, okay, I need to figure out this portion too. And that's when I landed on bigger pockets and just started listening to every podcast and all the webinars. And, every time I was in the car, that's all I would listen to.
Yeah, that's how I started. Exact same way, listening to the podcast on Bigger Pockets because I wanted to get into real estate investing. So, can we talk about your producing job for a minute before we get into you getting into short-term rentals and investing? So, I'm really curious as to what type of work you do. I know you said commercials, but like what kind of work? Like, and what does a producer job like entail? Is that the right word? I don't know.
So right now, my main client is AT&T. So all the commercials with Lily,
Mhm.
since the pandemic has hit, I produced pretty much all those commercials.
Awesome.
And it's great. Like she's awesome. We have a great like crew that's almost like family to us now. But besides that, like I've done music videos, I've done some TV, I've done some movies, stuff like that. But where I've kind of landed is I mainly do commercials at this point. And what producing is. So it's almost like a contractor where you're putting together the entire crew, you're overseeing the budget, you're overseeing the schedule, you're negotiating with vendors and crew and whatnot. So something that kind of relates to real estate is different problems come up all the time, and you just have to fix them. You have to solve them. And how I handle things is like I don't like to freak out at things. I like to just figure out how to solve them. Because if you freak out, that doesn't really solve anything. You just need to, buckle down and try to figure out how to make it work.
I knew Josh was a producer because he looks so clear and clean on this. If you guys are watching this on YouTube, I mean, this guy's got exceptional lighting in the background. He looks clear on his picture. But yeah, man, that's awesome. Rafa, go ahead. Sorry, dude. I just wanted to make sure.
No, I just had a side question. I was gonna ask if you had, what are they called, the producer assistant or something like that, like the
a PA, production assistant.
There you go, production assistant.
Yeah, so we have every job we have a bunch of PAs that are on our set, and they do everything from running to get coffees or food or I don't know. They kind of do all the grunt work around the set. So, but we need a lot of them, and they're very helpful.
That's cool. Yeah, I had a couple friends that did that back in the day.
I was on a set one time, man, and the craft services on that set were freaking like better than any restaurant I've ever been to. I'm serious. It was like it's almost like a dream life when you're on set like that. It's crazy, man. It's like it's not real. Like, you know what I mean? It's real, but
it's pretty funny. Like when I was first, I think I was still in college, and actually, so I took a year off of college. After my freshman year, I wanted to transfer. I didn't know what I wanted to do, so I took a year off. And my dad's cousin, my second cousin, was a writer for DreamWorks for a TV show, like their first TV show. And so she said, "Hey, while you're trying to figure things out, do you want to come work for me?" And I was like, "Yeah, that'd be amazing." And so that was my first kind of, dip into it. But I specifically remember there was an episode that she wrote, and my parents visited set because they were like, wanted to see what she wrote and like the whole thing. We were standing in an airport hangar where they built a freeway, and it was going to be this huge like car pileup scene. And I'm literally standing in this center of the freeway with my cousin. I'm looking around and I'm like, this literally was in your head. And now we're physically standing in this space. It was so crazy to me. But the reason why I brought it up and why you said it was like the best craft service is like my dad, I think, had the best day of his entire life, because it's like the craft service truck, you go in, there's like fresh soup, there's sandwiches they bring out, there's this, coffees. And I was just laughing because it's like my dad loves food and snacks and stuff like that. So, he just had the best day ever.
Yeah, it's so weird to see exactly what you just said. Like somebody, and I trip out on like movies and stuff. Like I'm big into like photography and stuff like that. And like I'll watch shows or, stuff like that. And I just trip out on like the scenes that people put in there. Or I've been watching the show on HBO recently, where they go into an elevator. You probably know, I'm forgetting what it is, and then they come up to the top and they like forget who they are. It's on Apple TV.
Oh, it's on Apple TV. Yeah,
Severance.
Yeah.
And just the scenes in that, man, like I'm getting goosebumps right now, like talking about it, because like it just trips me out how good. And it's Ben Stiller. Like who the hell would have thought Ben Stiller would be a director? But he made that Walter Mitty movie, which is freaking phenomenal. That has a lot of like really cool picturesque, cinematography in there. So, but yeah, craft services, so cool, man. And so you kind of got into it from your cousin or your aunt or whatever. Is that how you got into the film industry?
My cousin, yeah, exactly. It's something that I'd always been interested in. I loved movies from an early age, and that was kind of my first foray into like the professional portion of it.
Yeah, super awesome. And I'm assuming there's a ton of cash in that too, right? Like you can make a pretty decent amount of.
You can make good money. I mean, like at least in my position, the problem is, and I maximize this as much as possible because I have a bunch of things going on, but it's like you're definitely trading your time for money. So it's like the harder, the more days you work, the more money you make. But it's not a compounding thing like real estate. So, like real estate, it's like you start putting the work in now, it's hard and you're doing a ton of work, but as you grow, it just compounds, and it's like that cash flow keeps coming and it grows as the more you acquire. So it's like, in that sense, it's great because since I do commercials and music videos mainly, I've done a couple movies, but it's like, I know movies, you could get residuals, you could get back end and stuff like that. Like, I haven't done movies where I got any back end at all, because they've all been super
Not yet.
small indie type stuff. Not yet. If I do a Marvel movie, I'll let you know.
Yeah, you hang out with Jon Favreau. Yeah, you guys can get some back
Yeah,
end on
exactly.
that.
Hey, Josh, is the income that you're generating from your producing job now the source of funding your deals now?
It is, yeah. So that, and there's a couple ways I do it. That for sure. Now that I have a handful of short-term rentals and long-term rentals, I definitely use those, like that cash flow, to go right back into rehabs and right back into acquiring more. So in terms of like my lifestyle, I mean, it's grown a little bit, but for the most part, I put all the money back in and just try to grow more and more and more. So it's like just compounds and gets bigger and bigger.
Got it. Yeah, that's awesome, man. So let's lead this into the real estate portion of it, of the obviously of the show here now. So you got through the cancer diagnosis. You've kind of dealt with all that stuff. You got out on the other side, and I'm glad you're healthy. You look great. So you had that, that whole situation happen. So what was your first deal? What was the first thing you got into, and why short term rentals?
So my first deal actually wasn't a short-term rental. I had been, it probably took me 2 years of offers at different markets and whatnot, and analysis paralysis and backing out over a very insignificant amount of money now that I look back at it, to where I heard a podcast on Bigger Pockets about turnkey rentals. And I had always avoided turnkey rentals because I wanted the equity. I wanted to do more. And the podcast that I listened to, though, broke it down saying, like, this is a great entryway. You learn so much just from this simple way to do it. And so what I did is I reached out to some property managers in the market that I chose was Kansas City, Missouri. They started sending me deals. I made an offer on one. And again, like being nitpicky, I was going back and forth after the inspection. They wouldn't fix certain things. It was supposed to be turnkey. And so I backed out. But that same property management company came back in like December 2020. I got a holiday special, they called it. And it was a 3-bedroom house for 70 grand. And I think it was already rented for $800 a month. And turnkey, did the inspection. I put an offer on it because it looked like it was worth 90 and from what I looked at. So I was like, okay, it's turnkey, but there's some equity in it. And put an offer in it, got the inspection. They fixed a couple things. Renter was already in, and then just closed. I wound up closing with cash on that one because I was going to finance. 2 weeks into it, the lender backed out because they were like, yeah, it's a property management company selling it. We don't feel comfortable. We're out. And I was like, okay. So luckily I did have the money to do it, and I did it. But a month later, I went to cash out refi, got the appraisal back, and it appraised for, I think it was like 116 or something. And so I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And so I pulled out $74,000, which was my initial capital plus closing costs. And, it cash flows probably a couple $100 a month. And that's like after vacancy, CapEx, maintenance, property management fees, stuff like that. And, that's not going to change my life. But what it did do is solidify the idea that this works. And I got a free house. Like that was
Literally,
the biggest thing for me. I was like, oh my God, I literally have a house for free and it's giving me money every month. And how I got over, the low, $200 a month cash flow was I started thinking about it as like a savings account that I had that was worth at this point $116,000. Someone else is paying into it. And I'm at this point doing nothing. Like the property manager is handling everything. They'll email me every once in a while, but that's about it. And so from there, I did have a little bit of a shiny syndrome, object syndrome, where I listened to Avery Carl's podcast. It was Bigger Pockets when she was interviewed on that. And she was talking about short-term rentals. She's talking about the Smoky Mountains. Everything she said just made so much sense to me. So after I listened to that, I reached out to her, set up a call, because not only an investor, she's, the premier agent for short-term rentals now in the nation, I would say. But back then, she mainly did Smoky Mountains, started looking for places, and then got under contract in February 2020. It was 2 cabins. It was a 3-bedroom and a 2-bedroom on 2 acres of land. And I think it was 635, that one. And I'd never been there. I didn't really know what the Smoky Mountains was like. But in February, when we went under contract for inspection, my family and I basically went out there, did a whirlwind tour of the Smokies just to try to get a sense of what it was like, checked out the cabins, and then the pandemic hit as the day I was closing, actually. Like the night before, I remember texting Avery saying, I don't know if I'm going to be able to sign because I don't know if there are notaries, if they're open. I don't know what, no one knew what was going on. And she's like, okay, everyone will be understanding. Just let us know. And she also said, you could back out too, because I know a lot of people are backing out because of this. And something in me just said, well, I think it's still going to be a good thing. If it takes longer to rent, I'll have time to figure this out. And so I just set in my mind, it's okay, even if I'm spending money on the mortgage every month for several months or whatever, I need time to figure this out. And that's kind of what I did.
That's awesome.
It's funny that you brought that up. I remember the day that COVID hit for me with all my short-term rentals, right? Obviously, same strategy, just very different. Mine's in the city, they're all arbitrage, and you're one house out in the Smokies. So you're attracting very different customer, very different market. How did it affect you after you went with your gut feeling? You said, yeah, I'm in, let's do it. How did it affect you once everything was starting to roll, actually rolling?
So I closed March 2020. I took about a month to interview cleaners and, buy new linens, replace a couple things of furniture here and there. It was all furnished, somewhat turnkey, but we just fixed it up a little bit. And this was all from remote. We did plan to go there when it closed, but when the pandemic hit, I was like, okay, I'm forcing myself to do this remotely. Had to really rely on maintenance people and my cleaners, and kind of it was great because I didn't need to be there, and it really showed me that I could be in Southern California and do it from afar. But once I listed, I think mid-April or so, the first booking I get, and I did lower the prices quite a bit because I didn't know what was going to happen. The 2-bedroom cabin got a 28-day booking like that. And that alone covered my mortgage and my mortgage and insurance. And so I was like, oh, okay. This was a low booking, but it's now I'm covered for the first month at least. And then after that, the 3-bedroom started booking. And so all that started to be profit. And when May, June, July hit, it's oh my gosh, people just wanted to vacation in remote areas. And those cabins were just booked like crazy. And that's what I was like, this is something, we're onto something here. This really works. And that's what I really started focusing on, buying more and more and more.
Yeah, that's awesome, Josh. What probably happened too is that your production company probably stopped at that point too, right? I'm assuming that everything just kind of...
Yes and no. So something interesting about that, it did stop. Yes, it was I'd say I didn't work in production for a month or a month and a half. And what we did, we were probably one of the first productions back up and running, and it was because the company that produces all the AT&T commercials, and Lily, who her real name is Milana, they were talking. She's actually a director with the company that does the commercials. And they came up with the concept of, hey, why don't we bring Lily back? She had been gone. That character had been gone for 3 or 4 years or something. Why don't we pitch AT&T? say, let's do Lily at home. And basically what we did was she basically like set up a set in her living room, painted walls, rearranged stuff, but she had no crew, like zero. So what we would do is we would drop things at her front door. A PA would sterilize everything, and then her and her fiance would bring it inside and kind of set it up. And so when we were shooting, we did the same thing. We built 3 Red cameras, fully built out with the lenses and everything, on a tripod, put it on her front doorstep, had lights, put it on her front doorstep, sterilized, back up, and then they would bring it inside the house. And then inside the house, we were all on Zoom. And it was like 3 or 4 days of prep of just like, okay, now place this camera here, do this to this settings here, whatever. But the crazy thing is like, we were all on Zoom. So I was literally in my garage shooting a commercial. And it was fun. It's like the kids could come in and join me for lunch and whatnot. It was this weird thing. I had 3 screens going, one screen just for the crew, one screen for my client and agency, and then another screen, which was the actual monitors of the cameras. But like our camera assistants could focus pull from their house over the internet, which was crazy to me. It's like, and she was directing herself. And she's so good at being in front of the camera, but then still being aware of notes for herself. Oh, I want to tweak this performance a little bit or whatever. And she would kind of talk it through so everyone was aware, but it just worked so well. And then that kind of ramped the production for that back up. And we were one of the first ones back up and running, which was, I was very fortunate to be on it. But since then, we just grew and grew. And when things start to open up, we built the store and a stage and, like just shot more and more and more.
Did that become like a standard for recording, or is it just something that happened? Like, do you guys still do like remote recordings like that now?
Not now, but for once we started, it did start to blow up a bit. I had other friends that were doing different versions of it. So yes, it definitely was. I think we were one of the first to do it, but a bunch of them started doing it. And then like there are companies that started building these like set in a box, because the problem is like she's alone in her, her place, but like usually you're interacting with actors or talent. And so sometimes we would have like a Zoom interaction, but how do you capture that other person without sending the same things that we did to Milana, where we would instead send like GoPros or something a little bit nicer in a box. And it was like almost like clearly set up. You open the box, the camera's set here, there's a light here, and it made it super simple for them. So companies started building these like studio in a box, and they would be able to send them to talent. They open it up, it has the light, it has the camera, everything's kind of set. And then people, the crew on the internet could kind of control all the different settings to make it look better.
Yeah, that's awesome. You guys remember when Tom Cruise was like freaking out about people that were going out and partying and stuff after he's like, you guys, look, we're going to shut down we're going to shut this down if you guys keep going out. Like some actors took it super serious, that they were actually had they had the luxury of being able to do that, being able to sit on set, get tested daily. And this was back when people weren't able to get tests like they are now, obviously. Tests weren't just around for everyone. But it was the privilege that we're able to get that stuff.
Yeah, when we started going back to the studio, like we have relationships with testing facilities. And so a lot of these testing facilities realize these productions need a ton of tests every day. And so they were making a lot of money by providing this service to us. And, they had their line of getting tests somehow, whatever. And we used, like everyone got tested all the time. And so like we did feel very safe even when we went back in person. So it's like the Tom Cruise thing. It's like, I get it, man. It's like everyone wanted to work. No one wanted this to shut down. And it's like
Right.
one person, if they do something that, wasn't part of the rules, it's like you could literally shut this huge production down just because of that. And so it's
Right.
not worth it.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. The production side of stuff is so cool. But obviously, like we're talking about real estate. I'm super fascinated by the whole that whole production thing. So I can talk about that forever. But awesome, man. So you got your first deal under the belt. So what started happening? You talked to Avery Carl. You got on. You started understanding that whole market. You got your first thing. You're booking. Like you were in. That was like almost the perfect timing, right, Rafa? Like for somebody in Gatlinburg or in Pigeon to get a property like right at that time, especially when you signed. Like, dude, that's when it like all the rural markets. So Air, Airbnb grew. The rural markets grew by 69% from 2020 to 2021. Like people started finding new rural markets because everybody had to drive somewhere. They were getting in their car, driving 2 hours away, and getting to specific places or avoiding planes. So you kind of had that perfect storm happen where you went with your gut and said, I'm going to do this no matter what anyway. You know, when a lot of people were backing out and scared, you were just like, I'm going to do it anyway. And you kind of lucked out, man, that you picked up a property with, because there's not a lot of, I from what I've looked at in that area, there's not a lot of properties that have two listings or two homes on one parcel of land. So you kind of lucked out on that end, and you definitely can't get anything for six something anymore. I mean, I can tell you that. So
not for two cabins, that's for sure.
no way. So once you saw that capital coming in, like what happened next? You know, what was the next kind of venture for you?
After that, I think I actually did go back to Kansas City because I started looking at wholesale deals, and someone sent me a deal where it was a house and a duplex next to each other. The whole thing, I think, was $200,000 for all three, and bought it. Put, I think it was $30,000 into two of the units. One tenant stayed, and it appraised for three something after I was done. So I basically pulled everything out. Plus, I think I made a profit of 30 grand or something. And then once that was stabilized, like let that roll again. But what I wanted to do is I kind of wanted to balance the short term and the long term, because I do know short term is so cash flow heavy and it really supercharges, getting to whatever goals you have in terms of whatever your monthly you want to do. So at the same time, I started looking at more Smoky Mountains, and a friend of mine was saying, hey, you should really look at Idlewild, California. And we went up there a couple times. We had never been before this, but my family and I just went up there to kind of check out the town. We did see this A-frame that we kind of fell in love with, and that was the first thing that we saw and wanted to, potentially make an offer on. And I think it was listed for $300,000. No one was at this point. Still, no one was bidding on it. It was June 2020. I wound up offering 250, and they came back with 275. So I took it, and we did put probably like $80,000 to $100,000 into that A-frame, and it was more stuff like the back deck was, I don't know, maybe 3 feet wide, and we built a giant back deck. So it's like, now I think it's like 16 or 18 feet. There's a dining table out there. There's a barbecue out there. And that's where the view is. So it's like before, you literally could just stand in the back without relaxing. If you sat down, the rail would kind of cover your view. Now it's like you have this expansive deck. It's like that was the moneymaker. Like that view is insane, right? But on top of that, we added a hot tub, we added air conditioning, we added some insulation, and then we focused on decor, and we made it as nice as possible. We knew that what we were attracting was the Southern California market. It was a bit high end. People like luxury, even though they're going to woods in a cabin. And so what we did is we just went for it, and we bought higher end furniture. We bought what we would like, like if we were going on vacation, things that we would like. And so we just kind of went for it. And that thing has been performing like crazy. I mean, we love that place. It's gorgeous.
What city is it again?
Don't tell him. Don't tell him. Do not tell him. He's going to jump in. Nah, it's Idlewild, Jesse. Sorry. We've talked about it before.
It's the mountains above Palm Springs, basically.
Got it. Okay, cool. Yeah.
I've been trying to buy a place there. Remember I told you, Josh, that my parents go there like literally every other month. They're there all the time. And they'll rent like these little cabins, or they'll go camping, or now he takes his RV. But I want to get a place there just for them so that they can have a place to go and I can rent it out the rest of the time. So yeah, Idlewild is a really, really good spot.
Something that because Idlewild, it's a pretty small town. And like compared to the Smokies, where the Smokies are, what you're getting visitor wise, that there's an infrastructure of the cleaners and maintenance and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. With Idlewild, we kind of looked at it as like, I think this can work. There wasn't as much data to prove it, but something that we talked about is like, look, if this doesn't rent very well, we love this cabin and we will use it. But, that's a bit of a risk if you're, as an investor, I would say. But the other thing that I looked at was like, there's a bunch of vintage cabins there that are staying vintage. And we love the style of the vintage, but we wanted to update like the ease of it. So it's like, that's why we put in the air conditioning system. We put in some insulation. We put in things that like made it just more comfortable, but kept the original charm of the actual cabin. And so I feel like we stand out in that market just because, like people are updating, don't get me wrong, but like there's just not a ton of them. So, if you like a certain thing, like I feel like we kind of stand out in that market.
Yeah, you know what? I have looked at this market before, and it is freaking fantastic. And you're right. There's a bunch of vintage, like 1950s builds, a lot of Eichler style homes that are like a mountaintop. It's a great market, man. And A-frames, no matter where you are, anybody listening right now, you pick up an A-frame and you turn it into something, it's going to kick ass no matter what. I mean, that's an experience in itself. So kudos to you for picking, an A-frame, and they're kind of a pain because they're not like any other property. They're built so different. But if you put the right, emphasis in it, and you put the right, stuff into it, you put the right kind of, furniture, like those places kick ass. They photograph well. People want to stay there. And plus, I mean, they're cool to be in. They really are.
It's definitely our favorite place to visit personally. We do actually have another A-frame now in Big Bear, and we kind of did the same thing. We went higher end. We updated, air conditioning, insulation, windows, hot tub, and then decor. And it's also one of our favorite places. It's nice to stay at.
I'm looking right now, Josh, on Google. I mean, on Zillow. There's nothing under like 600,000 right now. So you're probably already like doubled or maybe even tripled what that property's worth from 2020.
I think so. Yeah. And that property actually did turn out to be a bit of a burr because, again, my lender backed out at the last minute, and it was something that I kind of saw coming. Like my lender in the Smoky Mountains is a rock star, and she is an investor herself. She understands that she is a wizard where she could, make the numbers work and kind of get things pushed through where it needs to be, or warn you where you need to improve or whatever. The lender I was dealing with in California, because she wasn't licensed in California, so at that time, now she is, but at that time, I basically used a lender that my real estate agent provided for me. There were just certain red flags when it's like they would ask for certain paperwork. I'd be pretty quick to send it over, and then like a week would go by and they'd ask for the same paperwork. And I was like, oh, okay, here you go again. And I think they missed some document that I had sent, and underwriters wouldn't approve it without that document. And it was like literally the last second. And so how I financed it was, at this point, I did have a HELOC on my primary house. So I used the money from that HELOC to buy it in cash and then fixed it up. And when it was fixed up, I refied and pulled the cash out. And I think I got pretty much everything back. So again, it was another free cabin, but I did put it back in my HELOC.
Got it. Is that where you have the 4 cabins that we were talking about? Let's talk about that for a second. We're running short on time, but can you talk about those that you're working on?
Sure. Yeah. So I just closed on, it's actually 5 cabins in the Smoky Mountains. They're all small, like ranging from studio to, there are 2 bedrooms, but they're tiny, tiny 2 bedrooms. And it's in Gatlinburg, and we are literally just starting renovations now. We kind of have the design idea, and we are ramping that up right now. And the cool thing about that one is it's my first commercial loan. And so I bought the property for $950. They're all very, very run down, just so you know. We're budgeted right now for $450,000 renovations, but those renovation costs are rolled into the loan. So basically, like they approved, $1.4 million. 950 of that was the purchase, and the rest is renovations. And I only pay on that 450 as I pull it out. So if I don't use a portion of it, then I'm not using that portion of the loan, if that makes sense. So I think that's kind of exciting, and it's the first time I've done this sort of process, and I feel like it's a great way to grow and scale bigger and bigger once I figure out this commercial portion of it.
Yeah, dude, Josh, it's crazy. You've gotten so much experience. You've done so much in such a little bit amount of time, right? I mean, you started in 2020 during COVID, where everybody was trying to be conservative and not spend any money. You said, "Screw this, I'm going in the opposite direction," and now you're like crushing it, man. It's awesome to hear. Like, it's very inspiring.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, no, I'm dead serious. It's like you have cabins everywhere. You have a bunch of short-term rentals. Kansas City, and we talked about Kansas City because I'm going out there too, and it's one of those things where it's like a lot of people. I hope that people listening to this are like, man, like it's very doable because you're like, dude, seriously, you're killing it. It's been we're not even at the end of 2022 and you just closed on 5 cabins. Like, my goodness, I can't even pick up one, and I've been in short-term rentals for 5 years. It's like, wow. So anyway, we're getting to the top of the hour, so I want to transition to our segment of the show where we ask our 2 questions. Being that this is the Big Break Show, I want to know what your big break was, right? In terms of life, short-term rentals, experience, finances, everything, whatever it was. What got you to this point in time in life that you're at?
Well, definitely the cancer diagnosis was a big turning point in my life. And that's kind of kicked me into gear of figuring out how to support my family without the regular job and without having to do day-to-day stuff or, doing it from wherever. On top of that, I feel like once I actually started closing on deals, the thing that I realized is so much of this, and this is coming from someone who loves to improve properties, and I look for value add, and I love the design aspect of it. But the one thing that it boils down to is the numbers and how to move money around. And it's like, that's not the sexy part of real estate, but it's the most important part, because in terms of financing all this stuff, it's like, yes, I had some cash, but the majority of it was like pulling out a HELOC on my property, moving this from that, refinancing, pulling the cash out, putting it there. I just felt like I was just taking money from banks or lenders or whatever and like circulating it and making it grow bigger and bigger and bigger. And so when people talk about, no money down and stuff like that, it's like, yes, I kind of have been using that. Like I was hustling in my job and I was saving as much as I possibly could so that I could use my own money as well. And that's how I was able to grow as quickly as I did. But it comes down to like finance. And that's why, when you realize, like, some people say their jobs, they work at a bank, but they say they're in finance. Sometimes those people are real estate people. And I never realized that. I have a brother-in-law that I didn't realize for years because he said he was in finance. And I kind of, didn't think much of it. And then when he saw I was getting into it, he's like, I do real estate, right? And he does like the biggest deals. He does, several $100 million hotels and this and that. And so obviously that's a fun thing to look up to and kind of aspire to. But it's about money. It's about banking and money and how to move money around.
Yeah, I agree 100% for sure.
Yeah, most definitely. I think a lot of people get caught up in that too. And Josh, I'm pretty sure you're going to be doing deals with your brother-in-law here pretty soon. By the way you're moving right now, man, shit, you're going to have hotels and stuff here probably the next couple of years, man.
Working on it.
Yeah, Josh, one of our other segments in this episode or in the show is learn and apply. So something that somebody could have listened to today, or some advice that you can give somebody from listening right now and getting started. What would be something that you could, suggest to somebody after listening to this episode to get out there and get moving and, get their butt in gear when it comes to any investing or mindset, anything like that?
I think the big thing is when you're starting and you're learning, it's a little bit overwhelming because there's so many strategies in real estate and there's so many different ways to make money. The bottom line is it doesn't matter which one you pick. Pick one that you think you enjoy and just focusing on it. And it's like, and that goes for which market you're going to, and don't make a stupid decision and just wing it or whatever. Still do the research. But like in terms of markets, there's so many markets that work. And there's so many different strategies that work in different markets. And I spent so much time looking at the different markets, nitpicking this and that. It's like, get into it. And I know everyone says it. It's like, get that first deal. But the thing that does is it shows you that it works in reality, not just in theory. And I feel like that's so important.
I feel like it's like your personal proof of concept. Once you have that personal proof of concept for yourself, you're just gonna escalate super fast. That's how it was with me when I did the first unit, and I was like, wow. Now I'm like, yeah, 50 something, and it's like I want to keep adding more. I'm just trying not to, you know. And
Yeah.
once people get
Yeah.
that first deal going, it's like there's no reason. The only reason you won't grow is because you either don't want to, you're lazy, or something really went wrong, right? Because when you have that one proof of concept for yourself, what's stopping you? You know it's working. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And even if something goes wrong, I mean, it could go one way or another. It's like someone could be like, you know what? I learned so much because that went wrong this way. And now I know not to do that next time. Or they go the other way and say, I'm out, I'm done. This isn't for me, which, that's fine. But it's like, I don't know. To me, I feel like everyone should be in this. It's so important to build for, you, your family, your loved ones, whatever.
Totally agree, Josh. When you say that you were doing research, what does that mean? Because we have a lot of people that are new listening. So, like, what does research mean to you in that sense?
I mean, everything I lived and breathed, podcasts, webinars, books. I mean, my kids made fun of me because it's like every time I'm in the car, I'd have to switch to music for them, but it's like the podcast would start automatically as we're in the car, and they're like, "Dad, more real estate." But it's like it's all I did. I mean, it's like I listened, I watched, I read. I just dove in 100%, and then I started going to meetups. I started going to talk to other people that are actually doing it, because I feel like that helps so much too. Because it's like, wait, does this really work? Like, I'm reading about it, but I'm a little skeptical. I don't know. But then it's like, you know what? It does. It does. And it's like, you could partner, or you could do it yourself. Like, there's just so many ways to do it, and yeah, it's just a great thing.
When you're around the right people, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. What's next for you, Josh? Like, what do you have? I know you got the 5 units. So, what do you have now? Like 10 units, somewhere right around there, in like a quick amount of time.
20 doors.
20 doors. Holy shit, man!
I'm telling you,
2 years.
crushing it.
Dude, that's freaking amazing.
So I have 6 renovations going right now. The 5 cabins and then one bedroom cabin. Those are all being renovated. Once those are stabilized, I'll have 11 short-term rentals, and then the rest are long-term rentals.
Yeah, that's fantastic. What's your cash flow looking like now? Like monthly, averaged with all those units. Oh, wait, half of them are not on there yet, or you're working on them.
Half of them are not on there, but just with the 5 short-term rentals, and I guess the long-terms that I have, I mean, I'm above, between 10 and 15 a month, I would say, net.
That's fantastic. And what else can you make that kind of money with 5 or 6 units? Like, it's insane, man. Like, and a lot of people look at that and be like, I want to make 10 or 15K. Like, this is literally how you do it. Like, this is the recipe for how to do that. You just got to start with one. You pick your market, and then it snowballs. And yeah, some people, it does take time to get capital, but Rafa said it earlier, proof of concept. You do it once, you realize the cash flow that comes in, then you go to meetups, you meet other people, you invest with other people if you need to. But there's opportunities out there.
In 2021, I only had 4 units up and running, and the gross for 2021 with those 4 units was around $400,000.
Freaking nuts, man!
So it's like, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's. I love when you said it earlier, and I talk about this. I was just talking about this with one of my best friends, and because a lot of people are like saving their money in retirement accounts, or trying to get to this big large sum by the time they're 50, so that they can have some kind of social security check, or some kind of 401k payout, or some kind of like Roth IRA or whatever. But here, what you said earlier is gold, because you look at an investment in real estate as a savings account. Everybody talks about, oh gosh, I'm working this W-2 because it's putting 401k, and I'm going to have 400 grand by the time I'm 60 years old. Let me tell you something. You buy one property right now worth 300 grand. By the time you're 60, it's probably being worth 6 or 7. Sell that bad boy. Not only did it pay itself off by having a renter in there the entire time that you were doing your regular life, right? Living life, doing whatever you're doing. That house is paying itself off. By the time you're 60, that one house, you sell it, there it is. There's your 600 grand instantly.
1,000%.
Right?
1,000%. So it's like, I see all these as savings accounts. So it's like, I have 20 doors at this point, and it's like, everyone is just, I mean, I know I'm stabilizing some of them, but they're paying themselves off. So it's like, it's crazy to me that everyone doesn't do this.
Yeah, they absolutely will pay themselves off. It's funny when you brought up the Kansas City turnkey. I got my friend a turnkey house from somebody that I found on Bigger Pockets too. I mean, we probably went to the same company. It's funny, but I was gonna buy it, and they didn't approve me for $120,000 loan because of the income I was making with short-term rentals, and I was like beyond myself, which is why now I transitioned to move things different. But I ended up giving it to my friend. She bought it. She now owns that house in Kansas City. She got it for like 135. It's probably worth like 220 right now. Hasn't put a single dollar
Mm-hmm.
into it other than the down payment. It's been paying itself off. And now every day I look at her and I go, yeah, you're welcome. You have a sick ass savings account sitting there because you know that in 30 years from now, that's going to be worth like maybe 400 or 500, who knows, maybe 300, whatever it is. But it's still free money by the time you retire for something that you did
Absolutely.
nothing,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, it's amazing.
I'm really happy that you came on here, Josh. I appreciate you coming on. So let everybody
Thanks for
know, where
having me.
can they, yeah, no, absolutely. Let everybody know, where can they get a hold of you? How can they reach out? Where can they learn from you? Where can they kick ass like you? Give us a scoop.
I'm on Bigger Pockets. I'm also on Instagram under Bunkhouse Worldwide. I do have several accounts, but that's my real estate account. If you want to look at any of my production type stuff, my company is called Check Your Head Films. And yeah, I mean, reach out. You could DM me on Instagram, and I will respond. I love talking about real estate and other things too. So
Very cool. Well, there it is, folks. Josh had a cancer diagnosis, got through that. That changed his mindset, changed his life, completely restructured the way you look at savings, money, everything. And, we've talked about this on our show before. We've had several guests that came on that have had similar moments, somewhat like yours. And then that through that darkness, there's like light where they finally like, oh, this is how things are. And I think that a lot of times we view those things in our lives as like, this is awful, this is the worst thing. But at the end of the day, it's like we get to choose the way we look at those things, whether they're positive or negative. And it's literally just a choice. And Josh, just by listening to you, man, in this hour, like you've made a choice to change what you're doing and to build something for your family. And I think you're doing an exceptional job. And man, I'm excited for what you have going on in the future. I love that you are in
thank you.
film and all that stuff. I think that's freaking amazing. And you work with Lily, or it's not a real name. I actually follow her on Instagram. I like what a lot of stuff she does. She seems like I like her activism. Like all the stuff she's really proactive about.
She's wonderful. She's very, very pleasant to work with, and everyone and on our crew love her, and it's a great thing.
Yeah, super cool, man. So those of you folks, go follow Josh. He just mentioned where his handle's at, and they will be down below. And if this episode resonates with you guys, please like and share it with other people that you love and care about. If this doesn't resonate with you, share it with somebody that potentially could find some value in it. We don't have sponsors and stuff on here for a reason, and we do that so that we can provide you guys with information. We do just ask for everybody to please share and like these episodes. Josh, dude, it's been a pleasure, man.
Likewise. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, buddy. Thanks for coming on. Appreciate you.
All right.
Thanks, man.